Once upon a time, there was a movie called Alien. It became a hit and spawned sequels, only one of which is actually worth a damn. Then there was a movie called Predator, which also became a hit and spawned one sequel, and then they made a few more years later, I guess. Then somebody had the bright idea to pit Aliens vs. Predator in a big event, and we got a comic book from Dark Horse as a result, and then the video games followed, and nothing else. Promise. Now, most of these games were first-person shooters, but the Alien vs. Predator franchise, which makes no sense as a title because that implies only one alien fighting one predator, when it's really one predator against many aliens, so the later games would change this little typo. I'm giving this way more thought than anybody else actually did. So there's that one Capcom arcade beat-em-up that people seem to like, never got a proper home port until 2019, where it would be one of many games included in an overpriced, oversized Capcom logo arcade stick that looks like a total fucking eyesore. I mean, save your money and stick with MAME for that one, kids. But a year before that beloved title came out, there would be another Alien vs. Predator side-scrolling beat-em-up for the Super Nintendo that is less fondly remembered, and for good reason. Released in 1993 courtesy of Activision, Alien vs. Predator is a single-player side-scrolling beat-em-up, which is already a red flag because you could have more than one Predator. We've seen more than one. Never mind. First played this at a friend's house a long-ass time ago, was a rental from the old video store, and that was the last time I played the bloody thing, and now here we are again, and yeah, so you're the Predator, you're fighting a bunch of aliens in New Shanghai City in the Vega colony. I think that's the general story of the game. Anyway, it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, charge your plasma cannon to beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, pick up the stray projectile weapon like spears and cutter discs, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, watch your step as you drop off the cliff, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, avoid the chest bursters as you beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, enjoy the elevator ride up the rocket ship, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, beat up a bunch of aliens, move to the right, and finally fight the alien queen for the Battle of Supremacy, and then move to the right to beat up a bunch more aliens, and the cycle continues. Oh boy, that was exciting. So yes, Alien vs. Predator has you doing a lot of what I just said. Do you really want me to go through the whole process again? Not that I'd mind. And it starts to feel a bit tedious after a while. And while repetition is something that's built into the DNA of the side-scrolling beat-em-up, the good ones usually have some added spice to make the experience more palatable, as it were. Alien vs. Predator does not do that. It is content in giving you the bare minimum effort, and that's all you're going to get, and the end result, unsurprisingly, is not very inspiring. Bad enough that it's only a single-player game, though it's worth noting that the Japanese version dubbed Aliens vs. Predator does have a two-player versus mode pitting a player alien against a player predator, though still no two-player co-op, which is baffling because, again, you could have more than one predator. They do exist. Capcom figured this shit out a year later, for fuck's sake. But here's the thing. All these aliens take like 1 billion hits to die. From the first stage to the final stage, you'll be dealing with super tough xenomorphs, and the hit detection on your punches are somewhat spotty at best. This is where your projectile weapons come into play, as they'll prove more useful in taking these things down, somewhat. When you defeat an alien, they'll sometimes drop pickups, whether it be alien skulls for points, potions and meat sticks for health restoration, orbs for temporary invisibility, or even a couple of the signature predator weapons such as a spear and disc. Both the spear and discs give you a few shots to use before they expire, and they're a fairly useful weapon against the aliens, but the caveat is that while you're armed, you can't pick up any other items. Why you can't do this? I don't know, but there you go. That leaves you with your chargeable plasma cannon, which can be charged to a couple levels to fire a blast that will knock down any alien it touches, or hold the button down for a second or two to unleash a torrent of plasma energy covering the entire screen at the cost of a slab of health. And with the right positioning and timing, you could line up your shots to knock down both aliens on screen continuously until they eventually die. It helps to keep those bastards at bay, but it also makes an already repetitive game even more so. Control is fairly basic. You've got a punch button, a jump button, and a blaster button, which is used to charge your cannon. These can be remapped in the button configuration options, but your L and R triggers are designated slide triggers, where you'll slide in the triggered direction, and this slide is useful for smaller enemies like face huggers and chest bursters, as well as playing cheap with certain bosses. Although the blaster helps with that too. Controls work well enough, though collision detection can be spotty at times, but it's not outright horrid. You've got adjustable difficulty, lives, and continues in the options. Fairly basic stuff for this sort of thing. Alien vs Predator certainly looks the part if nothing else. It might not be the most colorful or exciting looking game to grace the SNES, and it probably won't win points in the variety department as far as the terrain is concerned, but in terms of conveying the sort of dark and grim and gritty atmosphere you'd expect from an alien infested colony, as well as the last level in the hive, it does a more than adequate job of it. The lone predator looks like a predator, and the various xenomorphs look like something that would resemble those aliens in some form or fashion. Animation is sort of jank at times, but nothing too terrible, I believe. The cutscenes that pop up between stages also look fairly good and do a fine enough job of pushing the game's somewhat flimsy story forward. Sound is fine, even if most of it doesn't fit. Nothing to say about the sound effects. I think they're generally fine, punchy, poundy sounds. The music isn't too bad for the most part, even if it is perhaps a bit too upbeat or energetic for a game featuring aliens and predators. Something more tense and befitting the more horror aspect of these characters would have been more appropriate, but I guess since this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, we get upbeat action music instead. Though to be honest, the music in the first stage sounds like it was taken from a random driving game, or at least it would be a good fit for that sort of game. Maybe Predator guy should stick with hunting. That's more his thing, I think. Overall, Alien vs Predator is a rather mediocre beat-em-up on the Super Nintendo, a console with more than its fair share of such examples. To its credit, AVP is an entirely functional and competently executed game that does what it does well enough and is content to do just that and not more than that. There is some fun to be had here if you just want another mindless beat 'em up to plow through and you don't mind that it's only one player, and I wouldn't necessarily call Alien vs Predator a bad game based on what I played, just a somewhat unremarkable and ultimately unmemorable one.